She survived emergency surgery. She survived a month in a medically induced coma. Her voice, the one that made an entire generation believe a 7-minute power ballad could feel like the end of the world, had already been to the edge and come back once this year. Then, in a hospital in Portugal, it happened again, and this time, she didn't come back. What actually happened to Bonnie Tyler in her final months has almost nothing to do with the story most tribute videos are telling. Stick around, because the real timeline is more dramatic and more heartbreaking than anyone reported at the time. Bonnie Tyler died on Wednesday, July 9, 2026, at the age of 75. The statement posted to her official social media channels did not soften anything. Bonnie's family and team are heartbroken to announce that Bonnie unexpectedly passed away last night in hospital in Portugal as a result of the illness that she was being treated for. That single sentence contains the whole shape of her final months, and almost none of it made it into the wave of headlines that followed her death. Here is the actual timeline. In May 2026, Tyler was admitted to a hospital near her home in Faro, Portugal, for emergency intestinal surgery. According to her family, she had suffered a perforated intestine, a serious and painful condition requiring immediate surgical intervention. Following the procedure, her official website announced she had been placed in a medically induced coma to aid her recovery. She stayed in that coma for roughly a month. In June, she emerged from it. Her team shared the news publicly, framing it as a hard-won recovery, a woman in her mid-70s pulling through something that would have broken far younger patients. For a few weeks, it looked like she had made it through. She hadn't. On the night of July 8th, going into July 9th, still in that same hospital in Portugal, still being treated for the same underlying illness that caused the perforation in the first place, she died. Unexpectedly, her family said. Not as the result of some new, separate crisis, but as a continuation of the exact battle she appeared to have just won weeks earlier. That detail is the part almost nobody sat with. The public narrative around her hospitalization had already resolved itself once. Coma to recovery, crisis to relief, and most casual fans who caught that update in June likely assumed the story was over and she was on her way back to full health. Instead, the same illness that nearly killed her once returned and finished what it started in the same hospital within weeks of her supposed recovery. Her representative and music executive, Judd Lander, released a statement that tried to hold both truths at once. Bonnie was unique, he said. She was a one-off, great sense of humor, a stunning voice, and great stage presence. The world has lost one hell of a great talent. Tributes arrived quickly from people well outside the music industry. A spokesperson for British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said he was saddened by her death, calling her one of Britain's greatest recording artists. A statement from Downing Street described her as an iconic figure who leaves behind a catalog of music that continues to touch lives, flood dance floors, and fill karaoke booths. Joe Stevens, the UK's Secretary of State for Wales, called her a Welsh music icon on social media, writing that she was sad to hear the news. For a government to formally respond to the death of a pop singer tells you something about how deeply Tyler had embedded herself into the cultural fabric of an entire country, not just its charts. To understand why her death hit as hard as it did, you have to understand how far she had come and how unlikely her career was in the first place. She was born Gaynor Hopkins in 1951 in Skewen, a small town in Wales, the daughter of a coal miner. She was raised in public housing in a home that, according to reporting on her early life, had an outside toilet. She dropped out of school at 16 and began singing in local clubs under a string of different stage names before eventually settling on Bonnie Tyler when she signed with RCA Records in the 1970s. Her voice, the raspy, husky instrument that became her entire identity as an artist, was not something she was born with. It was the result of a medical accident. In 1977, she underwent surgery to remove vocal cord nodules and was told by her doctor to rest her voice completely for 6 weeks. According to her own account, she screamed in frustration one day during that recovery period, and the strain permanently altered her voice, leaving her with the raw, torn quality that would define her sound for the rest of her career. It is a strange, almost unbelievable origin story for one of the most distinctive voices in pop music history, an act of frustration that accidentally created a signature. That new voice carried her first major hit, 1977's It's a Heartache, which reached number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the United States and number 4 on the UK singles chart. But her real transformation came in the early 1980s, when freshly signed to CBS Records, she made a request that seemed almost absurd at the time. She told the label she wanted to work with whoever was producing Meat Loaf's music. That producer was Jim Steinman, the operatic maximalist songwriter behind Bat Out of Hell, one of the best-selling albums in history. Tyler later recalled being told flatly that Steinman would never agree to work with a country rock singer. She pushed anyway. "Ask him," she reportedly said. "You never know." He said yes. What came out of that partnership was 1983's Total Eclipse of the Heart, a nearly 7-minute epic built from Steinman's wall of sound production and Tyler's torn, desperate vocal performance, punctuated by a haunting call and response with backing vocalist Rory Dodd. It topped the Billboard Hot 100 for 4 consecutive weeks, hit number 1 in the UK, Australia, and Canada, sold more than 6 million copies worldwide, and has since passed 1 billion streams on Spotify. The BBC would later call it, without irony, the most epic song ever written. Songwriter Diane Warren, herself responsible for some of pop's biggest power ballads, once said simply, "It's a perfect song, and Bonnie really conveys the drama." A year later, Steinman brought her back for the Footloose soundtrack, pairing her with songwriter Dean Pitchford for Holding Out for a Hero, a track so relentlessly propulsive it has outlived most of the decade that produced it, turning up in commercials, films, and karaoke bars for the next 40 years. The AV Club would later write that the song works because Tyler sounds, in their words, like she's ripping herself apart, which is, in many ways, the exact quality that made her voice so instantly recognizable in the first place. It was a wound turned into a signature, and an entire career built on the sound of somebody giving everything they had, note by note. Across her career, Tyler earned 3 Grammy nominations and 3 Brit Award nominations, remarkable numbers for a singer who, by her own account, nearly signed a second 5-year deal with RCA instead of taking the gamble that led her to Steinman in the first place. When Jim Steinman died in 2021 at the age of 73, Tyler was one of the first people to publicly grieve him. "I am absolutely devastated to learn of the passing of my long-term friend and musical mentor," she wrote at the time. "Jim wrote and produced some of the most iconic rock songs of all time, and I was massively privileged to have been given some of them by him." She called him a funny, kind, supportive, and deeply caring human being. It was a rare moment of Tyler speaking not as the woman who sang those songs, but as someone who understood exactly how much of her career had depended on one collaborator's strange genius and who never stopped being grateful for it. Even decades later, she never grew tired of the song that defined her. In 2021, she told an interviewer that she never got tired of singing Total Eclipse of the Heart, that every time felt like the first time, and that she never would have dreamed it would sell 6 million copies worldwide. In a 2024 interview timed to that year's solar eclipse, she spoke about how her phone would ring off the hook every time a real eclipse happened somewhere in the world, radio stations and fans reaching out, the song finding new relevance again and again, decades after it was written. That is the part of Bonnie Tyler's story worth sitting with. Not just that she died suddenly in a hospital in Portugal weeks after appearing to survive a medical crisis that should have been the whole story, but that the woman behind one of the most enduring vocal performances in pop history came from a mining town with an outdoor toilet, turned a botched vocal surgery into her signature sound, talked her way into working with a producer who was told to refuse her, and then spent the next 4 decades never once getting tired of the song that made her name. She fought for that career the same way her most famous vocal performances sound like they're fighting for something. And in the end, according to her own family, she fought the same way right up until the very last night in that hospital. That is the real story behind the headlines, the parts of Bonnie Tyler's final months that got lost in the shorthand. If you want more retrospectives like this one, the next video is already waiting for you. Go watch it now. We will see you there.